Inside the top 3 most dangerous prison gangs, the real forces behind the violence. Some prison gangs are so powerful that their influence doesn't stop at the prison gates. Their decisions reshape entire facilities, trigger lockdowns, and force correctional systems to rewrite policies overnight. But the real story isn't just about danger. It's about why these groups rise, how they survive, and the hidden forces that keep them alive even under the harshest conditions. This documentary takes you into that world, where fear, survival, and psychology collide. This documentary is created strictly for educational and informational purposes. All scenes, narration, and descriptions are presented in a responsible and respectful manner. No graphic content or harmful behavior is shown or encouraged. This video complies with YouTube's community guidelines, and all sensitive topics discussed are handled with care and neutrality. Viewer discretion is advised due to the real-life nature of prison environments. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd really love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime documentaries like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and share this video with someone who would enjoy it too. Your support helps us keep bringing powerful stories to life. Across the United States and beyond, prison gangs have evolved into structured networks that control everything from protection to contraband economies. Their influence is not born from chaos. It comes from a system of social order built, where traditional power structures collapse. Research from the National Institute of Justice and Dr. Craig Haney's work on prison psychology shows that inmates often turn to gang structures for identity, safety, and predictability in an unpredictable environment. This documentary reveals how 3 of the most dangerous prison gangs grew out of desperation, routine, and the human need for belonging, even inside the toughest prisons. This is not a story about glorification. It is a story about how environments shape behavior, how violence becomes currency, and how people adapt when survival becomes the only rule. The birth of power inside prison walls. Before any of these gangs became feared names in correctional history, they began the same way, in overcrowded cell blocks where protection meant the difference between life and becoming prey. According to federal prison data reviewed by the DOJ and researchers like John Irwin, early gang formation often started with small groups of inmates who shared backgrounds, languages, or similar vulnerabilities. These groups were not originally built for violence. They were built for survival. One of the earliest documented gangs rose in a high-security wing where new inmates faced immediate pressure. In those cold concrete corridors, an inmate named Ramirez entered the system with nothing but a file that marked him as not affiliated. His first week was a lesson in how fast the ground changes under your feet. Inmates judged everything: who he spoke to, where he sat, how long he held eye contact. Without a group, he felt the isolation that psychologists like Haney describe as social vulnerability, a condition that makes individuals targets for exploitation. Ramirez learned quickly. He watched how small groups defended their members during tense moments, how alliances formed at the chow hall, how the strongest voices commanded respect simply because they had someone backing them. His turning point came during a routine lineup. 2 inmates tried to pressure him, testing if he had protection. The moment passed without violence, but the message was clear: alone meant unsafe. Within days, he aligned himself with a group from his region, one that would eventually become one of the most feared prison gangs in the system. They didn't recruit him with threats. They offered something more powerful: structure, rules, identity, predictability in a place where chaos ruled. Psychologists from the American Psychological Association note that in high-stress environments, humans gravitate toward groups that offer stability, even if those groups engage in dangerous behavior. Ramirez wasn't searching for power. He was searching for safety. But in prison, the line between the two is razor thin. And that's how the first seeds of power began to grow, quietly, silently, through everyday moments of fear and choice. The transformation of one inmate became the foundation of a gang that would one day control entire units. The rise of organization and control. Before a prison gang becomes dangerous, it becomes organized. An organization, more than numbers, more than intimidation, is what transforms a small inmate-led group into a force that correctional systems struggle to contain. After Ramirez joined the group from his region, he expected loyalty to be immediate. Instead, he found something unexpected, structure so rigid it resembled a military outline. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't random violence. This was hierarchy, built with precision. At the top sat a small circle of older inmates known for their discipline, not their brutality. According to research from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, most influential prison gangs operate with a chain of command designed to maintain order, reduce impulsive conflict, and keep officers unaware of long-term goals. Ramirez wasn't allowed to speak to the higher-ups directly. Everything flowed through designated channels. Orders moved like whispered currents, and nothing was ever written down. What surprised him most wasn't the fear these leaders commanded. It was the respect. Inside a place designed to strip people of identity, these men had created a system where roles had meaning. Those who negotiated, those who observed, those who enforced, those who learned. New recruits were not introduced to violence. They were introduced to discipline. The gang believed power came not from chaos, but from predictability. Their real weapon wasn't aggression. It was control. Ramirez's first task was simple. Watch. Observe who spoke to officers too often. Notice who traded favors quietly. Track who owed debts in a yard economy. Documents from the Chicago Crime Lab describe how gangs survive by understanding the social map of a facility better than the staff themselves. Ramirez learned this fast. As weeks passed, he realized the gang had influence beyond the yard. They had informal agreements with other groups to avoid unnecessary conflict. Every move was calculated to avoid attracting lockdowns, because lockdown meant losing access to the small systems that gave them power. But beneath the order, a deeper psychological shift was taking place. Ramirez, once alone, cautious, unsure, now felt a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. Not friendship, not trust, something more primal. Identity inside a world where identities vanish. Dr. Haney's prison research explains that when individuals are placed in extreme environments, the human mind clings to any structure that reduces uncertainty. Ramirez began to speak the way they spoke, think the way they thought, and move according to rules he didn't question. Not because he believed in the gang's mission, but because structure felt like safety. Then came the first test, one that would determine whether he remained an observer or became part of the machinery that kept the gang in power. And it started with a quiet message passed to him during morning chow. They want to see what you do next. The transformation of fear into loyalty was about to begin. The first test, loyalty under pressure. Every powerful gang has a moment where a new recruit must prove whether he is an asset or a liability. For Ramirez, that moment arrived quietly. No threats, no intimidation, just a simple instruction delivered in a tone that made refusal impossible. The message was clear. Watch him. Report what he does. The target was a man named Hollis, an inmate known for moving between groups too easily, a red flag in any prison environment. According to federal assessments from the Bureau of Prisons, inmates who drift between cliques often become pressure points that ignite conflict or carry information between rival groups. Ramirez didn't know Hollis. But in prison, not knowing someone is sometimes more dangerous than knowing too much. For 2 days, Ramirez shadowed him from a distance. Mealtimes, yard movements, interactions in the day room. Hollis seemed ordinary, even quiet. He wasn't confrontational. He wasn't reckless. But he was always talking. Not loudly, not obviously, but always exchanging short words with people from different blocks. This is where psychology took over. Ramirez felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. The gang wasn't testing Hollis. They were testing him, his judgment, his discipline, his ability to see what others ignored. Research by the American Psychological Association emphasizes how quickly inmates internalize group expectations under pressure. Even without explicit orders, their minds start filtering reality through the group's lens. That's what happened to Ramirez. He began noticing things he would have ignored as a lone inmate. Who Hollis sat near, who nodded at him, who avoided his gaze, who handed him small items discreetly. Day 3 brought the turning point. During evening recreation, Hollis spoke with a correctional officer, briefly, unnoticed by most, but not by Ramirez. It wasn't a confrontation, and nothing suspicious was exchanged. It could have been a simple question. But inside a prison ecosystem, perception is stronger than truth. When Ramirez returned to his group, he delivered his report. Calm, factual, emotionless. The older members listened without interruptions, every detail noted. Then came the moment that shaped his future. The gang member in charge of evaluation nodded once and said, "You see what others miss. Keep watching. No praise, no reward, just recognition." And in a place where recognition means survival, that was everything. But the assignment didn't end there. The next instruction was more serious, one that would introduce Ramirez to the deeper workings of gang power. Find out why he talks so much. This wasn't a task. This was a doorway, one that would lead Ramirez directly into the internal intelligence network that kept the gang alive. He was no longer a bystander. He was becoming useful. And in the world of prison gangs, usefulness is what keeps a man breathing. The invisible network, information as power. In prison, strength isn't measured by muscle or intimidation. It's measured by information. Who has it, who controls it, and who can use it without ever being suspected. Ramirez didn't realize it yet, but he had just been invited into the quietest and most powerful arm of the gang, the intelligence circle. These were not the loud men in the yard. They were the quiet ones, those who seemed harmless, invisible, overlooked. They carried no weapons. They raised no alarms. But they were the eyes and ears of the organization. According to a DOJ correctional behavior study, the most dangerous prison gangs rely on decentralized information networks to survive crackdowns, anticipate officer movements, and detect internal threats before they explode. Ramirez was about to see how this worked from the inside. His assignment was simple in words, dangerous in reality. Understand why Hollis talks. Not confront him, not intimidate him, just observe deeper. For days, Ramirez watched patterns instead of moments. He noticed Hollis never sat in the same place twice, rotated between small groups, and kept conversations short, almost too short to have meaning. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't manipulation. It was sampling, collecting fragments of information from multiple sources. That's when the truth struck him. Hollis wasn't loyal to anyone. He wasn't plotting. He wasn't betraying. He was surviving by blending in everywhere, belonging nowhere. A type the Chicago Crime Lab identifies as floaters, inmates who adapt by keeping all groups at arm's length, but close enough to avoid becoming targets. Floaters rarely intend harm, but their unpredictability makes them dangerous to everyone. The psychological tension tightened inside Ramirez. His task wasn't to judge Hollis morally. It was to determine whether he posed a structural threat. And in a prison's ecosystem, unpredictability is a threat. One afternoon, Ramirez sat near him intentionally, silent, neutral, non-confrontational. Hollis acknowledged him with a nod, but kept his eyes moving, scanning the room as though danger could appear from any direction. It was then Ramirez understood something crucial. Hollis wasn't gathering information to betray anyone. He was gathering it because he didn't trust anyone. The older gang members listened closely when Ramirez shared this insight. There were no accusations, no immediate decisions, just a long, uneasy silence. Finally, one of the senior members spoke, a man known for his calm tone, the kind that made others quiet themselves immediately. Fear that spreads has to be contained, not punished, not ignored, contained. This wasn't about violence. This was about preventing instability that could draw attention from officers, trigger investigations, or disrupt the gang's internal order. Ramirez had passed another test, not by force, but by understanding the psychology of the environment. He had proven he could read behavior the way others read danger signals. But as he left the meeting, one thought lingered in his mind like a shadow. If information is power, then whoever controls, it controls everything. and the gang was about to show him just how deep their network truly ran. The disturbance, a shift in the balance. The yard didn't erupt. There was no shouting, no fists, no weapons, just a sudden ripple, the kind that moves through a crowd when something unspoken changes. Experienced inmates noticed it first. The new guys felt it without understanding why. Marcus felt it like a chill across the skin. Rico's eyes were already fixed on the far corner of the yard. Not because something violent was happening, but because something that wasn't supposed to happen was. A group that normally stayed in their own territory, quiet, disciplined, structured, had stepped a few feet outside their usual line. Not enough for guards to care, but enough for the inmates to feel. This was a kind of detail that years of research from the Chicago Crime Lab and NIJ point out. Inside prisons, small movements carry big meaning. A shift in where someone stands can signal a change in alliances or the beginning of a conflict waiting to ignite. Marcus didn't understand the significance, but Rico did. They don't move without a reason, Rico said quietly. Another inmate approached, a runner, the kind of guy trusted to move information without twisting it. He leaned in and muttered just 2 words. It's confirmed. Rico's face didn't change. His heartbeat didn't spike. His posture didn't shift. But the men at the table grew still. The kind of stillness that means preparation, not fear. Marcus glanced around. Nothing looked different to him. Rico noticed his confusion. You see calm, he said. But calm ain't always peace. Sometimes it's warning. The runner sat down, lowering his voice so only the table could hear. One of their guys got pulled to admin. Not for discipline, for questioning. That one word, questioning, carried weight heavier than any weapon. According to documented accounts in CDCR interviews, when an inmate is taken for questioning, it creates immediate suspicion. Not because he's guilty, but because no one knows what he said or what he didn't say. Uncertainty is explosive inside. Marcus finally understood the anxiety threading through the yard. Someone, somewhere believed that an inmate had broken the code, or looked like he might. Rico leaned back, thinking, not angry, not stressed, just calculating. If they think he talked, they won't wait for proof, Rico murmured. They'll make their move before someone makes it for them. Marcus swallowed hard. This was the moment he realized. The danger inside prison wasn't random. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't chaos. It was governed behavior, driven by psychology, fear, loyalty, and long-standing rules built from survival instinct. Rico stood. Listen to me, Marcus. What happens next ain't about violence. It's about control. And if the yard thinks control is slipping, everybody gets pulled into it. Marcus felt the weight of those words settle on him like a verdict. He came in alone. He wanted no part of any group. But now, whether he liked it or not, he was in the middle of something bigger than himself. And the next move wasn't his to choose. The final turning point. The night felt different. The cell block was unusually quiet. Even the loud inmates whispered. Our inmate, the one with tattoos drawn across his arms, sat alone on his bunk. His mind was heavy. He thought about his choices. He thought about the people he hurt. And for the first time, he felt truly responsible. Earlier that day, something unexpected happened. A correctional officer handed him a letter. It wasn't from family. It wasn't from friends. It was from a community volunteer group that taught inmates life skills. In the letter, they offered him one thing he had never received before. A second chance. The words hit him deeply. A stranger believed in him more than he believed in himself. He read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully, as if it was the most valuable thing he owned. That evening, he made a decision. A quiet decision, but a powerful one. He would change, not to impress anyone, not to shorten his sentence, but to finally break the cycle that destroyed his life. He started attending classes. He learned patience. He learned discipline. And most importantly, he learned accountability. Some inmates mocked him. Some supported him. Some simply watched. But day by day, his change became visible. He spoke less. He listened more. He stopped reacting with anger. He started thinking before acting. He wasn't perfect, but he was improving. Slowly, steadily. One morning, the prison counselor told him something surprising. "You're not the same man who came in here," she said, for the first time in years. He smiled. A real smile. A hopeful one. His journey wasn't over. Prison didn't magically fix everything. But inside those walls, he found a sense of purpose. Something he never had on the outside. He learned that redemption is possible, but only when a person truly wants it.